Welcome to Love and Relationships for the Modern Mystical Life. I'm your host, Juliana Christine. We are in a relationship revolution. The scripts we inherited from our families, culture, and every love story we were ever told aren't working anymore. But the new way hasn't been written yet, and I'm here to write it with you. This podcast goes beneath the surface of all your relationships, past the advice into what's real, the messy, the tender, and the beautiful. Come on in. This is one of the most common questions that I get from people. Juliana, why do I always have to go back to my childhood? And I love this question because I get the struggle in that. Like, why do we always have to go back to the past? I have that feeling too, sometimes. And what I want to talk about today is the reason why. And there's a very deliberate reason. And it's not because we always have to live in the past. It's that when we are able to truly meet the parts of us that didn't get what we needed when we were kids, that our present and then our future has a chance to change. So I'm going to bring a few different concepts here together. So when we look at us as children, when we are children from the ages of 2 to 7, we exist in a theta brainwave state. Now, theta brainwave is what you as an adult get into when you are in deep meditation or when you are being hypnotized. So what this means is that as a child, you are being hypnotized into your experience of the world. Now we add in another part, the fact that our nervous system, specifically the mammalian branch of your nervous system, which is responsible for connection. Because to a mammal, connection means survival, and we are mammals. Humans actually require their mothers longer than any mammal on the planet. And so if we are disconnected from our mothers, then it feels like that sends a sense of I might die running through our nervous systems. And this is where it gets tricky because connection to a human feels like, is this person with me right now? It is a nervous system attunement. And as soon as the nervous system recognizes a place where there is a disconnection, it goes into survival strategy. And survival strategy to the nervous system is fight, flight, freeze, or fawning. And fawning is known as people pleasing in a very general sense. So let's say your mother does not or cannot meet you when you are really upset one time. And this happens between the age of 2 to 7. Let's say she doesn't come when you're crying or when you fall down, or when you fall down, no, let's use this differently. You fall down and instead of being supportive and connective, she gets upset or angry. Maybe she's just been having a bad day and she has flooded herself. But there's a disconnection. Her nervous system does not attune to yours. Now, we don't know what makes a situation more intense to a child than another. I don't know, but I think it's a repetition of continuous, a similar experience over a few times where we start to go, oh, I need to create connection here in this place, no matter what. And so in that place of disconnection, our emotions get stirred up, and then we start creating stories. But at that age, they're not stories, they're just emotions. And our emotions go, and our survival mechanisms go, I need to do something to get the connection back or the love back. And so then we try on different behaviors. I'll use myself as an example. So when I was 2.5, I was the firstborn grandchild on both sides. I was my mom and dad's first, and I had all of their attention until I was 2.5 when my little brother was born at 28 weeks. This was in the mid-'80s. And my parents were very stressed. And so they started leaving me with neighbors, with my aunt and uncle, with my nana and grandpa. And I can only imagine for this little 2.5-year-old who had not spent a lot of time away from her mom before, was suddenly getting left. But not only was I getting left behind, I could feel the immense stress and fear going on in my mom and dad's nervous systems because it was very, very scary. 28 weeks is very early. My brother was in an incubator for a long time. And so I've hypothesized this and talked this out with my mom at length. And through the lens of how I perceive the world and us as humans, what I understand is what happened around that time is the quieter that I was, the more mom and dad would be more affectionate to me, let's say. My mom and dad are amazing, but it was like, oh, if I was quiet, then their nervous systems were quiet and the fear wasn't existing as much. So this happened over quite a period of time when I was younger. I forget how long Adrian was in the incubator for. He is now a very healthy man with a son of his own. But I think what happened for me there is I was hypnotized into the belief that, oh, the nicer, the calmer, the sweeter, and the more quiet I am, the more love that I get. And so this became my mask. This became the way that I showed up in all of my relationships. And I did this all the way through 2 to 7. Eventually, my second brother came along, and it just was like, oh, the quieter, the better, the calmer I am, that's when I get mom and dad's attention. My brothers did it in a totally different way. We all have different strategies to get the love. So my nervous system was like, okay, this is how I have to be in order to be connected, i.e. to be safe, i.e. to stay alive. Okay, so we've got the theta brainwave state, and we've got now my nervous system is going into this like, ooh, I have to be this way. I am being hypnotized into this belief about who I am. And so this then has me repeating patterns over and over and over again throughout my lifetime. Then you add in the idea of wounding. So in family systems theory, we grow from a little baby, and every time we have an experience, we develop a bigger concept of who we are as self, as an individual in relationship to other. And where that wounding started for me, I hypothesize that my wounding started when he came very early. We don't develop there. We don't develop the solid self in that place. And so every time so often the same wounding happens again and again and again as we grow up through teenagehood and then into adulthood. And we keep choosing experiences and people from the wounded place. And that's because if we can just get the love when we are in the wound, it's this feeling in our psyche that I will get the love that I never got as a child if I can just get it here as an adult. So guess what I chose as I got older and went into relationships? Men who couldn't love me as me because I showed up in my people-pleasing mask. And then when the true me came out, or the more authentic version of me came out, they didn't know what to do with that. And it was the same experience that I had again and again and again. Now we're going to add a third part to this. We have a part in our brain that is called the default mode network. The default mode network is a system in the brain that is responsible for conserving energy. So the brain uses 20% of the body's energy in order to keep it going all day long. 20%, that's a lot. And then the rest of the body uses what is left. So the default mode network's responsibility is to actually reset you to your default place, to what you defaulted or were hypnotized into as a child. And this is why someone can have a really powerful therapy session, plant medicine session, a deep meditative experience, and they feel completely changed. They're exhausted afterwards because the brain is now trying to create new neural peptides, new neural pathways for a new experience. But then a few days later, you're back in the old habits. This is why, because the default mode network is only doing what it's here to do, which is to keep you running efficiently. So then this is why we need to go back to childhood. Because in order to change the default setting in your experience, your perception, your emotions, your nervous system, you need consistent practice over time. This was something that I've experienced at length because we used to call it, when I was trained in counseling in psychology, that we used to call it an ego kickback, that we would have this huge, deep connective experience with other people. A lot of the work that I was trained in was in group work. And then a few days later, I would be a mess and I couldn't remember the felt sense of connection and acceptance. That's because it wasn't the ego, it was the default mode network kicking me back in order to keep my body efficient. So when I continue to bring my clients back into childhood experiences, it's not to relive the pain. It's actually to go to that wounded child part and give it what it needed in that moment. So your mind also doesn't know the difference between past, present, and future. This is why you can think yourself into anxiety, why you can think yourself into feeling really crappy, why you can imagine a future and feel the excitement of it in your body, even if it isn't here yet. It's because there is no difference to the brain and then to the nervous system of the past, present, and future. I forget the author's name, the guy who wrote The Body Keeps the Score. Gabor Mate talks about this a lot. It has to do with we can heal traumatic events by being in the mind, in our internal psyche, and doing something different there if we are connected to the body and the nervous system. So this is where then we bring in the idea of internal family systems. And I'm going to have my friend and amazing colleague come on and really talk about this with us. But internal family systems looks at our internal psyche through three lenses, where we have our inner child parts, which are made up of multiple parts, which are all related to our emotions. So any emotion that you have is related to a child part. If you're having quote unquote positive emotions, your child parts have everything they need in that moment. Your nervous system has everything it needs in that moment. If you're experiencing negative, quote unquote, negative emotions, your inner child part needs something. Most often it is linked to when you were an actual kid and you didn't get what you needed. So that's the first part of internal family systems, the inner kid parts. Then we have the adult self. This is the highest expression of an adult that is possible, of which very few of us are operating on the planet. So the inner adult is not attached to emotions. The inner adult is operating from a posture of curiosity, compassion, and patience. The inner adult has all the time in the world for the inner child parts. The inner adult is always willing to sit and be curious about the inner child's experience. And then we have the third part, which is inner wisdom or inner guidance. And this is where we can tap into a power, a knowing, an all that is much greater than us, where there is a wisdom that comes through that is linked to, you could call it creator, the divine, God, angels, whatever you want to call it. And we lean into that part in my work that we do. And I'll go into that at some later date. Let's go back to the adult and the inner child part and how we can use this framework to go back to the kid parts and have a new experience. So I just did this with a client the other night, and she was having lots of feelings. And so what we did is we went internally, somatically into the body, and then simultaneously adopting the posture of the adult self by getting radically curious, radically compassionate, and patient about what the inner child is experiencing. And you do this with your eyes closed. And it can be as simple as saying, when you are having a lot of emotions, I'm right here. I'm not going anywhere. I'm listening. And what that does is it starts to bridge this wound where you begin to give yourself what you needed as a child. And then the next step is beginning to feel that new experience in the body, to actually go, oh, actually, I can feel myself calming down a little bit. I can feel myself actually believing those words. And we stay there with that feeling. We make sure that we really marinate in that new experience that emotional part of you or that child part of you never has really felt before. And that's the place where things start to change because you give yourself a new experience. However, remember, the default mode network is doing its job all the time. I'm going to reset us so that I use as little energy as possible. So all of the rest of the energy can go to my internal organs and my blood and my fascia and everything that needs to happen inside of us every day. And so this is where practice and a continuing of addressing the emotions or the inner child belief systems and creating this beautiful relationship between your adult self and your inner child so that you actually start to get what you always needed as a kid. I have done this for quite a while in very different ways. And this way through the internal family systems has been the most effective because it's something you can do when you are on your own. If you're feeling a lot of emotion, you can actually just acknowledge yourself from a place of compassion, curiosity, and patience. The inner highest expression of the adult has no urgency. There is no need to rush because the child is the most important thing in that moment, in that relationship. And so what slowly starts to happen over time is as you develop this relationship, it's like any relationship, right? It takes time. It takes a willingness to keep coming back again and again and again, to continue conversations again and again and again. And often when I get to this part with my clients, they go, oh my goodness, Juliana, this is going to take forever. And I promise you it doesn't, because everything inside of you is deeply connected. It's like a domino. If you work with one aspect of yourself and bring yourself, like really get curious about what's going on for you somatically, emotionally, belief-wise, and you just listen, that one part will start to wind its way through down to other parts. Everything inside of you is connected. I did this a little while ago with I was really angry. And when I was a teenager, I got really angry. So I went from like people pleasing, doing everything that I could to be perfect as much as I could, and worrying about how my actions would always impact my family. I was always worried about it. And then when I became a teenager, it was like it got to be too much. I couldn't hold it anymore. And I got really mad. I got really angry. And this teenager part was coming out, and she was really mad. And so through this process, what I did was I closed my eyes and I connected to this version of me, and I saw her immediately. I saw her in her mid-1990s hippie clothes, leaning against my high school wall, smoking a cigarette and glaring. She was so mad. She was so mad. She was just glaring. And I saw myself as the adult, the curious, compassionate, patient adult going up to her. And I just said to her, makes sense you're feeling this way. It's okay. And I felt this inner part of me go, oh, she's going to make me put the cigarette out. She's going to make me stop smoking. And of course, as the adult, I didn't. And I felt this anger that was inside of me, this angry teenager that didn't get what she needed because she was really angry. And so she scared people. I felt her kind of relax. And I felt her kind of like looking at me like, oh, this woman's not going to tell me what to do. And then I just sat in my mind's eye, right? So it's like, this is like an imagination, but it's also a knowing. It's this felt sense inside of you. I felt myself sit down next to her. And I just sat there and I just kept saying, take your time. There's no rush. I'm just going to hang out with you here. I love you. I'm listening. And I can feel her now where she's still a little bit suspicious, just a little. She had a rough go. I had a rough go as a teenager, but she's relaxed. Like she feels safe with me. So there's this part of me that is now that used to be really suspicious of the world, that used to be really scared that I was too much. That's kind of like, oh, maybe I'm okay. Maybe everything is actually going to be okay. And so I've created this relationship between me as the adult, Juliana, who has done all of the things that she has done in her life, has gathered so much lived experience, has studied yoga, has studied counseling, has shown up differently in so many different relationships, has done so many things. She is now supporting this part of me that never went away as I got older, because that's where the wounding was. That was a wound. And so this is why we have to explore our childhood, so that we can give ourselves what we didn't get, so that we can actually give ourselves the love we needed when we were kids. And when you can give this to yourself, right? So one of the arguments from people is like, well, I needed this from my mom or dad. Like, yeah, for sure you did. And this actually gives you what you needed, because the mind does not know the difference between past, present, and future. This is how powerful you are to create change in your life. Now, the trick is, as I mentioned, we've got the default mode network happening. And so the trick is to not just do it once and then forget about it, to actually make it a habit when you're having some big emotion, to check in with your inner child parts, to look within and go, oh, what is it that I need here? Oh, maybe I just need to listen to myself. Oh, maybe I need to sit with myself and show myself compassion. Maybe I need to get really curious about what this was like for me as a kid. And you learn so much about your own needs. You learn so much about the story that is going on through your mind, about how you've created the perception and the perspective on the world. And the more and more you do this, the more that wound starts to heal. You stop operating from that inner child part that is scared. because that's the emotion under every emotion. Under fear, under judgment, under sadness, it's fear. I'm scared I might not survive. So allowing this to be something that you carry just as awareness as you go into your day. Allowing this to be something like when you get upset or sad or angry or frustrated or scared, that's not your ego. That's an inner child part, a wounded part of you that needs your care and attention, not something to be blamed or attacked or get frustrated with. And this takes practice because that posture of the inner adult, the curiosity, the compassion, the patience, that is a muscle that most of us weren't taught how to exercise. And we've been living from these inner child wounded parts for a long time, especially towards ourselves. So give yourself some grace as you do this. And you can simply say the words, I'm right here. I'm not going anywhere. I'm listening. And you can say this again and again and again. And that it's like a mantra that calls in your adult self and you going with your brain going, I am going to perceive myself through this lens, through patience and curiosity and compassion. If you're a parent, you know that that is how you ideally would love to support your kids. And because this world is a crazy, wild place and we all have wounds and we all have limits and we all make mistakes, sometimes you can't. And the more that you practice it with yourself, the more you can give it to other. And then the more that we can give it to ourselves and the more that we can give it to others, the more we create a relational field between all of us, a community outlook where we can show up like that with each other, as opposed to from all of these wounded child parts. I mean, essentially, the reason why the world is the way that it is because most people are operating from these wounded parts, not from the higher self of the adult self. So your invitation is when you have emotions that come up that feel hard, can you show yourself compassion? Can you show yourself curiosity? And can you show yourself patience? And if you have a part that comes up and you start getting judgmental or angry or upset at yourself, impatient with yourself, can you also show that part compassion and curiosity and patience? This is why we go back to childhood, so that we can give ourselves what we needed, so we can repair the disconnection in our nervous systems. And so our default mode networks get a new system setting that this is how we're going to be with ourselves and with each other in the world. If any of this resonated with you, or if you have a question, there's a link in the show notes where you can leave me a voice note and I will happily answer your question on a future episode. Let me know if you've tried this, if it works for you. I love to hear from you. And I'm wishing you the most beautiful day.